West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Congressman Clyburn joins us now. Thanks for being here, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Congressman, this seems important to you. It seems personal. And I don't have to remind viewers, although I did, the link that you have with President Biden. Tell us what you're advocating right now.
Well, you know, Ari, the discussion about the filibuster has been going on for a long, long time, over a century. The fact of the matter is, the filibuster came into being in the early 1900s, and it was supposed to be to extend debate in order to protect the rights of the minority. And that's fine if you're extending the debate. But if you are using the technicality of a 60-vote rule to sit in your office somewhere, or maybe go on vacation and put a hold on somebody or something, that to me is a big, big problem. Now, when Strom Thurmond set the filibuster record, he was on the floor for over 27 hours, standing on the floor, extending the debate. That's fine. But what we're doing now is stopping fundamental constitutional rights to have one person, for instance, I'll call his name Ron Johnson, Wisconsin, who has already demonstrated to us what he really thinks about people of color, when he would not be threatened by insurrectionists, but would be threatened by people of color if they're demonstrating on the Capitol grounds. You think that guy is going to relent and allow people of color to have their constitutional voting rights, their civil rights? No. So why should we empower these kind of people if they should get elected to office? So that's what's got me a little bit miffed. When we sit here and say that someone's constitutional right to have an unfettered vote is threatened, we're going to allow that to continue with a filibuster. No, that cannot be.
It seems to me you're speaking very clearly, sir, here with 2 points. It's not even about debate when it's being abused this way. And how much power should Democrats allow people who are going to demagogue and attack the hard-earned voting rights of regular people in this nation? With that in mind, can you give us a window into, have you discussed this recently with the president, or will you?
Well, I have not discussed it with the president, but I have discussed it with some of the president's people. I do believe that the president's got a whole lot to do. He doesn't need to be talking to me. But the people who are helping him to carry out his agenda, I do talk to some of them, and I would hope that they would understand. I've got children, I've got grandchildren. I don't want my grandchildren fighting the same battles that I fought as a teenager. along with John Lewis and many others, going to jail, trying to get the right to vote. And here we are all of a sudden going to have someone stand up and says, no, your vote won't count. All you got to do is look at what happened in 2020. They were not challenging the votes in white precincts. Fulton County, Georgia. They're out there up in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, challenging the votes in African-American precincts. So we know what they're doing. And I cannot see us standing idly by and says we are going to respect the rights of the minority. It's minority of the voters that is causing the problem. So we're going to respect the rights of the minority that's trying to prevent the majority from voting? I don't think so. Let's think about what we're saying here. So when anybody says that I got to look out for my minority voters, I'm going to ask you, aren't I a minority voter?
Yeah. I mean, look, you speak very clearly, sir. I will tell you, some of these politicians, some senators, it's hard to follow sometimes what they're even saying about the parliamentary thicket. You've really boiled it down. I think viewers can hear what you're saying about whether this is going to be fair or not. I want to put to you what Mitch McConnell says, because notwithstanding all the arguments you just made, the Republican leader says, careful what you wish for, he'll make it even worse if you went through with this reform to end the abuse of these obstruction tactics. Take a listen to Mitch McConnell.
Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like.
Congressman, he seems to be saying if they do what you're calling for, he'll burn the place down, scorch it. Your response, sir?
Well, I seem to recall a summer known as Mississippi Burning. If that's what he's talking about, and I mentioned that on the floor on Friday, we are talking about fundamental voting rights. If you want to extend debate on an issue, a legislative issue, then that's fine. But we're talking about people's right to vote. That is what is at question here. Having your votes counted, having someone pass a law that says you cannot vote on Sunday, you cannot have souls to the polls anymore, you cannot give someone water who is standing in line to vote. You got lines 10 and 12 hours long. Someone gets thirsty, it's going to be a crime if I give them a bottle of water. That's the kind of foolishness that's going on down there in Georgia, and they're going in other places as well.
It is Tuesday, the 23rd of March of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Well, another tragedy in the midst of our society. I guess we're getting back to normal, huh? We have multiple mass shootings every day now, and as more people get vaccinated, that's how we're getting back to normal. I don't feel very good about it. Coming on the heels of this past weekend when racist gun nuts, by the thousands I should add, came into my timeline to pretty much troll bot me, or just the whole issue of guns and racism and misogyny. This latest mass shooting here in Colorado, coming on the heels of this last one, that was actually the whole argument about guns over the weekend was because I didn't even bring up guns. All I said is that this racist violence against Asians must stop. And One of my followers on Twitter made mention that his wife, who is from the Philippines, felt so threatened here over the years that they moved back to the Philippines. And from that, racists came into my timeline to not only say, oh, but you know what, Asians are the worst racists in the world. And then in the next Twitter breath, they made me well aware, and my follower, that they have guns. I don't know how that came about, but it did. And I made the bad mistake of making a small joke, saying, we don't want to take away everybody's guns. Just this racist former military, we want to take his guns. Because in his Twitter bio, he made the world well aware that he's former military. And then all arguments that you might, as meaning me, might present in terms of just like some rational arguments are diminished and, thrown out the window because you don't know what a stack is. Like, I don't know what a stack is. I'm sorry. They had SWAT on TV. I know what a stack is. So I just said, oh, you just want to see me at the bottom of the pile, meaning the first guy in is going to get shot and they're going to be on the bottom of the pile, the bottom of the stack. And from that, these liberals don't know anything. They don't. They call AK-47s assault rifles. Those aren't assault rifles. So then you say military grade. They're not military grade. You don't know anything about guns. Guns kill people. Okay? So we now have a situation where just in the past week, Republicans in the legislature here in the United States voted for the wife beaters to get more guns. The Violence Against Women Act, 140 some odd Republicans voted against it. They voted for the wife beaters because I guess that's a powerful constituency and they can't lose them. And I suspect that some sort of misogyny is part of this Colorado tragedy. Now, I know it's wrong to speculate, but there was a fellow who was interviewed by CNN. I'm sorry, not by CNN. A local TV affiliate. And he said that his grandchildren was with his daughter-in-law and his son waiting in line to get their COVID shots. And this guy came up to a woman right in front of them and shot her. When that happened, then they ran upstairs, according to the grandfather. His son, daughter-in-law, and grandkids ran upstairs, apparently with store employees, and hid in a broom closet for an hour. Why would the guy come up? Now, it could have been random, okay? Could have been random, but it has the earmarks of some sort of domestic squabble. I am only speculating. We'll know more when his domicile has been completely searched, and maybe we'll get some information. The Boulder police, and rightfully so. I mean, one of their own was shot dead by an AK-47. That's not nice. 51 years old. Joined the force at 40. Was trying to get out of the front lines, apparently, too, is what his dad said. Officer Talley's father, who was trying to become a drone operator, get out of the front lines. He had 7 kids. But his rights and his kids' rights take a back seat to every wife beater out there, and apparently they're apologists. Everybody has to have a gun. We can't let the wife beaters be controlled because that means they're going to come after us. Well, are you a wife beater? Maybe you shouldn't have a gun. Now, of course, I did in this tete-a-tete over the weekend with these racist gun nuts make, certain kinds of proclamations like, hey, I don't know, I'll just make it up, see what triggers you. So I just made mention any former military, we'll start there, anybody formerly in the military who are advocating for the violent overthrow of our government should lose their pensions along with their guns. No more military pension for you. And we get to take your guns. And of course, then it was like, oh, you're going to come in there, you're going to be brave enough, man. Are you going to be the brave one to come in and take my guns away? No, that's why we have a representative democracy. We have our proxies do that, you idiot. Has nothing to do with bravery. It has everything to do with law and order that you always espouse because you think it's only about making law and order apply to black people or Asian people or Mexican people or anybody, trans, gays, lesbians, law and order on them. But you get to do anything you want because you're white. I'm not even going to get into how they took the guy in this Colorado shooting, walked him over to a gurney with blood coming down his leg. It looked like he got shot in the ass. Could have been the cop that first came on the scene, Officer Talley. I believe that they possibly returned gunfire. Now, there are some reports that he didn't get into the store. There are other reports that he was in the store, Officer Talley. And that there was gunfire that was really loud, like from an automatic military-grade weapon, and then gunfire that wasn't so loud, which sounded more like a handgun that a cop would carry. So maybe, he got wounded somehow. Officer Talley may have done that. But I guess he was injured enough that they couldn't stop and get the guy a Burger King, a Whopper at Burger King, after killing a cop. Now, I've seen perps who just punched a cop, not during the D.C. riots, of course. They just let all those people go. But, they've been pummeled pretty hard. I'm curious to see if this guy has any black eyes, because that usually happens too, but probably not. Why? It's a short, pudgy white guy having a bad day. Probably found out his wife was going to get the COVID shot, and everybody knows that's fake. I don't know. I'm only speculating. Is there any reason to this kind of violence? There's no reason for it. Whatever the excuse is, it is an excuse. So military-grade weapons in the hands of civilians, maybe you should be part of a well-regulated militia first. Just because you're between the ages of 15 and, 45, that you automatically are in the National Guard? No. Just by dint of the fact you have a gun or an armory of guns, weapons, doesn't mean that you are automatically part of a well-regulated militia. The well-regulated militia are people who train on a regular basis and mostly keep their weaponry in an armory. And when you're told to muster, you come and get the arms that you are to bear. Nobody gets to have a bazooka, all right? I gotta have a bazooka and a silencer for my bazooka. Otherwise, you're violating my constitutional rights. Well, what about the constitutional rights to live? That is granted in the Constitution. And I would think that has a much more powerful, those are much more powerful amendments than the one that says, we get to kill people. Because these idiots are not amassing their weaponry for hunting. And then it became personal protection. No, they want to foment an insurrection against the United States of America and shoot government officials first. And then they'll get to the poets. They always do. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, that was Congressman Clyburn torching McConnell for voter suppression, and he is encouraging Democratic legislators to play hardball. Listen to David Waldman get rid of the filibuster. On the rest of the menu, the only Asian American lawmaker serving in the Kansas Legislature was physically threatened in a western Kansas bar, albeit from an out-of-state visitor, but it was all about being Asian. Nevada announced a $45 million settlement with McKinsey and Company over pushing opioids to the public. Yeah, they're dealers. And Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to make reparations to its black residents. Now expect the white nationalists to be so mad. I mean, even Lindsey Graham says, look, we can't give reparations. Yeah, well, we are. Too bad. And good. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Honduran Indigenous anti-dam activist Cerros Escalante was shot dead in front of his young children. In front of a church, too. And Greece ordered private doctors to join the COVID-19 battle. Private doctors are being conscripted. They're being called up. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Radio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, so why don't you go chat? To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, off to the left there is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, send those funds to us once a month, and then we pool that money with what we pull out of our own pockets. And we pay our bills, which then allows us to fly under the radar, and then we get to continue resisting this, well, Nazi takeover or whatever it is. It ain't part of a representative democracy. We know that. This authoritarian takeover of our representative democracy, we resist it because it's our civic duty. And we thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty for 10 years now. That's right, we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary here at Netroots Radio. 24/7, 365 resistance broadcasting as only we can, because we handcraft every bit of content on this concern. Yes, we do. We call it handcrafted. Why? Well, because, well, it just is. Yeah. It is true. Pretty much everything that you hear has our hands in it because it has to be formatted in some fashion. All right? We don't just let a robot take over. Real people are involved, and that is us, and we thank you for allowing us to do this for the last 10 years. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more, and we thank him for doing so. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, mostly because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Coz about 10 minutes before showtime and get that out there on social media like Twitter and other social media platforms. And also because, I make these, what I like to think are pithy little humorous remarks that might be pointed at, well, this authoritarian takeover of our body politic. How dare they? Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts. Please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay. Well, I got to say, we've been fairly prejudiced, bigoted, racist against the Asian community for a long time in our history. When we brought over, just a little less slave, I guess, Asian workers, men, to build the railroads, they were not allowed to have their wives come with them. Yeah, it was called the Asian Exclusionary Act. So we've had this bigotry and racism towards Asians codified in our laws before, and hopefully part of what a representative democracy is, when they talk about making it a more perfect union, is that we're not perfect. We're working on it. Yeah, we started off being a slave nation. The idea is to evolve from that and get away from it. Because we're humans. You don't enslave conquered people like they did back in the day. And you don't enslave people to make them work for you for free to drive some sort of sick economic engine. Well, on the other hand, I guess it is natural law looking at ant colony. How much individual volition is there? Well, there might be some, but they sure do look like they run around with one mind, the hive mind. So this bigotry directed towards Asian has been, long-lived, shall we say. Oh, my sous chef is working away. The snoozing sous chef, I hope it's not too bothersome, but we love him, and we're not going to kick him out, okay? He's working right now. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Andy Subasa Field. The only Asian American lawmaker serving in the Kansas Legislature said he was physically threatened in a western Kansas bar by an out-of-state patron who questioned if he had been carrying COVID-19. Yeah, I got it in my back pocket. You want some? In social media comments posted on Friday last, Representative Ru Zhu, a Westwood Democrat, said the man confronted him and used an expletive, questioned why he was wearing a face mask. Well, because we're in a pandemic. What are you, an idiot? Zhu has told the AP that the patron also questioned if he was carrying the virus. Yeah, it's in my back pocket. You want some? That's a pretty specific dog whistle at Asian Americans from the last year, Zhu said. And he's Chinese American, by the way. Most of the anti-Asian American rhetoric that has happened has had some form of that message. Yeah, I'm carrying in my back pocket. Many members of the Asian American community see the shootings at 3 Georgia massage businesses and spas that left 8 people dead, 6 of them women of Asian descent, as a reminder of harassment and violence that has been occurring against Asian Americans since COVID-19 entered the country. Months after the confrontation, Zhu said he heard the patron searching for him in the bar, yelling that he was going to kick my ass. Really? In a post shared over 200 times, Zhu said he visited the Russell Sports Bar after featuring as a guest on a PBS television show based in nearby Bunker Hill. Zhu said he was in the bar with the show's host, who was white, and also wore a mask, but he wasn't targeted. Zhu said waitresses apologized to him after the incident, and a customer bought him a drink. He said people at the bar told him the patron was from out of state. Everybody at the bar who's actually from Russell was amazing and kind. And I had a good time, Zhu said, adding that he doesn't think where the incident happened is important. In a letter to Zhu, Russell Mayor Jim Cross called the patron's actions hateful and inexcusable. I ask that all Americans join the city of Russell in condemning this detestable incident and the many others like it, Mayor Cross said, and all Americans must join in the condemnation of this racist behavior. Michelle L. Price of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, by the way. Nevada has struck a $45 million settlement deal with McKinsey and Company for the global consulting firm's role in advising opioid makers how to sell more prescription painkillers amid a national overdose crisis. God damn the pusher man. The Western state reached the deal after sitting out a multi-state settlement with McKinsey that was announced in February. The hard bargaining has allowed Nevada to win a settlement that's 3.5 times larger than the average settlement with other states. Nevada needed and deserved more than what was being made available to us in the multi-state settlement, State Attorney General Aaron Ford said. Ford, a Democrat, said that had Nevada stayed in the multi-state deal, it would have received $7 million, which he called woefully insufficient. The $45 million will be paid in 2 installments of $23 million in 45 days and another $22 million in 120. McKinsey said the deal reached with Nevada is consistent with the commitment we made in February to be part of the solution to the opioid epidemic, and it believes its past work was lawful. The company said the settlement agreement does not contain any admission of wrongdoing or liability. Yeah, they don't want to be sued by all those people, those families who overdosed because the pusher man pushed these drugs. Staff at the AP bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to make reparations available to its black residents for past discrimination and the lingering effects of slavery. The Chicago Suburbs City Council voted 8-1 to distribute $400,000 to eligible black households. Each qualifying household would receive $25,000 for home repairs or down payments on property. So that's not $400,000 for each. $400,000 to be spread out. Okay. The program is being funded through donations and revenue from a 3% tax on the sale of recreational pot. The city is pledged to distribute $10 million over 10 years. Probably because it's really hard for black people to get into the pot industry because, white Nazis pretty much control it now. Qualifying residents must either have lived in or been a direct descendant of a black person who lived in Evanston between 1919 to 1969 and who suffered discrimination in housing because of city ordinances, policies, or practices. Well, since everybody had red line laws, you couldn't get a loan in a bank. CC&Rs prevented you and Jews and anybody who wasn't white from being able to live in that neighborhood. So I would say it's pretty much any black person who happened to be anywhere near Evanston. Alderman Rue Simmons, who proposed the program that was adopted in 2019, said pro-reparations groups have offered pro bono legal assistance if the program is challenged in court. This is set aside for an injured community that happens to be black that was injured by the city of Evanston for anti-black housing policy, Simmons said. The city council acted after dozens of citizens addressed the body, and the plan received some pushback from several. Alderman Cicely Fleming, the lone vote against the plan, said she supports reparations, but what the city council was debating is a housing plan that is being called reparations. She said the people should dictate the terms of how their grievances are repaired. Fleming described the program as paternalistic, and it assumes black people cannot manage their own money. Hundreds of communities and organizations across the country are considering providing reparations to black people. They range from the state of California to cities like Amherst, Massachusetts, Providence, Rhode Island, Asheville, North Carolina, and Iowa City, Iowa. Denominations or religious denominations like the Episcopal Church and prominent colleges like Georgetown University in Washington. The efforts, some of which have been underway for years, have gained momentum in the wake of the death of George Floyd in police custody last May in Minneapolis. President Joe Biden has even expressed support for creating a federal commission to study black reparations, a proposal that's languished for decades in Congress. Well, you got all these Southern bigots using the filibuster to keep everything from happening. Maybe that'll change now. Let's hope so. And the lone vote against reparations in Evanston here, Alderman Cicely Fleming makes a pertinent argument. So let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Sarah Vitak. Someone who knows how can pick a lock using just a paperclip. But how about with a smartphone? Researchers at the National University of Singapore wondered if smartphone audio of a key turning inside a lock could be used to figure out the shape of that key. And, spoiler alert, under the right conditions, they could create a few very good candidate keys, including the correct key. Soundarya Ramesh, a grad student who led the work on the project, which the researchers called Speakeasy, said that the work was inspired by some previous research where the movement of smartwatches on people's wrists was used to figure out the code of combination locks.
Essentially, what they did was they were looking at smartwatches on your wrist in order to infer the pin to the combination lock. So in some sense, they're able to measure the angle, right? So we were like, okay, wait, people are doing this for combination locks. Maybe there are some, similar insights that we can apply to other kinds of locks. And the most prevalent kind of locks is these kind of physical locks and keys.
The first task for the team was to get audio from a key opening a lock and to see if they could pull useful information out of that audio.
Whenever you insert a key into a lock, it produces a series of click sounds.
The pins of the lock moving over the ridges of the key is what produces the clicks.
Which is not really audible for the human ear because it's too close to be resolvable. But when you hear it from a high-quality microphone, you can actually clearly hear these click sounds.
Once they verified that getting this series of clicks out of the audio was possible, they moved on to using simulations. And that's because for the type of lock that they chose, the quote-unquote key space, or the number of possible unique keys, was 586,584. And they wanted to test how this type of analysis would work on every possible key. So instead of getting actual audio for 586,000 keys, they just simulated where the clicks would be in those audio recordings.
Speakeasy was like the best case analysis for an attacker. So if he manages to get all the click information precisely, then this is how the results would be.
Using the time between each click and some clever geometry, the researchers attempted to figure out the shape of each key. Immediately, about half of the possible keys were deemed unattackable. And that's because some of the clicks that those keys would produce would overlap with each other. This left about 330,000 potential key shapes. More analysis was able to narrow down each sound signature to just a handful of key patterns. The research was presented at ACM's Hot Mobile 2020, which is a computer science research conference. The strategy is a long way from being viable in the real world. For one thing, it relies on the key being inserted at a constant speed. And for another, the audio element has a lot of challenges, like background noise.
The main point of this work was not really to say, stop using these keys because they're not really good. It's more about just being aware of what keys we're using, what locks we're using. So I think being aware of what is actually on your front door is very important.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sarah Vitak.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2005. That was the day 15 workers were killed and another 170 were seriously injured in an explosion at the BP refinery in Texas City, Texas. Workers were restarting a unit down for repairs. As they filled a tower with gasoline, it overflowed, sending a geyser into the air. The igniting hydrogen vapor cloud created a chain of explosions that destroyed the nearby trailer housing temporary contract workers. The explosion shed light on many key problems throughout the industry: the increasing use of contract workers, safety shortcuts, and qualitative lack of industrial process controls. A 2007 Chemical Safety Board report found that years of cost-cutting, poor worker training, and a safety culture with serious deficiencies left the plant vulnerable to catastrophe, but company leaders ignored the warning signs. OSHA fined BP $21.3 million and more, but ultimately settled for $13 million. For years, the catastrophe was studied closely to eliminate the hazards. But 10 years later, a 2015 joint investigative series by the Texas Tribune and Houston Chronicle found that, quote, there is little evidence that the 15 lives lost on that March day brought much of anything. The death toll at U.S. refineries has barely slowed. At least 64 energy company employees and contractors were killed in the decade before the blast. At least 58 have died in the 10 years since. The Department of Energy has tracked nearly 350 fires at refineries in the last 8 years, almost one a week. Refinery workers have gone on strike, demanding, among other issues, an increased emphasis on safety. For the United Steelworkers, it is a daily fight to implement the critical safety actions the union developed in the aftermath of the blast.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. I'm Mark Boulanger. The need for continuous development of skills amongst workers has become even more crucial as the pandemic changes the world of work drastically. In order to better understand what labor unions can do to help this skills development, the Workers' Activities Bureau of the United Nations International Labour Organization held a global webinar. The Bureau operates under its French acronym ACTRAV. One of the participants in the webinar was Martin Henry. Mr. Henry is a research officer with Education International, the global union for teachers and other educators. He raised a central question about how workers will be able to develop their employment skills as the pandemic continues on.
If in the time of COVID, we're talking about access via the internet and via ICT and those sorts of ways to innovative practice, how are we going to develop the whole of the world and the whole of the workers' population? There are equity issues in that we have to resolve. And working in Africa, as we have been intensively over the past couple of months, those questions in the education system are huge as well, where you've had many students who've not been at school. How do we connect them back into the system of working out how to develop their skills in a broad sense, and how we get them connected to a whole life of learning so that they're going to be able to continue to grow and continue to think in this way. Unions also need to be involved in shaping the needs of workers and workers shaping their understanding, because it's not a one-way street. There has to be a negotiation between union management and workers on the shop floor about how those skills are changing and shifting. And they may also have requirements that are personal, that are about developing skills outside of the workplace and are connected to their communities and their ability to support and be engaged in sustainability issues, environmental issues, issues across a broader picture. We've also got to be clear that the knowledge that needs to be delivered in terms of the skills that are applicable in the workplace must be delivered by trained professionals. There are, of course, unions who are able to do that job. Now, I include unions as educators because they're trained professionals in their understanding of what the worker is experiencing and how the worker is responding. And when we talk about the barriers that have been thrown up, they're multifarious. I've already referred to the equity issue and the issue of access and internet, which must be overcome. There's also a fractured global infrastructure that must be brought together in a more cohesive way. And we've seen in the last few months, in very clear and no uncertain terms, that a drive away from collaboration and cooperation across countries and between people is not going to help us either in facing COVID or in facing the challenges that skills changes are bringing to us. I think our ability to opt out of learning is disappearing. And there must be a way in which we recognize that as workers who take power in this question, that we must be central to the solution. To go back to my African colleague who said, we're not just troublemakers running round, we're actually the glue that will hold this economy together. And that's only going to happen through collaboration between all of us as unions in different areas, that we're able to support each other. And as educators, we believe we've got a crucial role to play. We also believe that ILO has a crucial role to play. And we think that we should stiffen up the approach to lifelong learning by moving towards a lifelong learning guarantee. Because just saying we want it to happen doesn't mean that employers are going to get a magic wand out of their back pocket and all of a sudden start putting their hands in deep and pulling out the cash to enable workers to do those shifts.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots more of us where we come from. And currently here it is 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my gosh. Actually, the actual temperature here at the mothership is more like 33, but at altitude, not very high above us, it's currently 28. Sunny conditions will prevail throughout the day with temperatures in the upper 50s to low 60s, winds out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear to partly cloudy overnight with lows in the low 30s. Winds will shift out of the north at 5 to 10. And mostly cloudy skies tomorrow. And looks like highs will be in the upper 50s, low 60s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then later on in the day to the evening, it looks like there's some rain coming in. And then Thursday, it looks like quite a bit of rain. And then maybe a dry period for a bit. Now, the confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County has not been updated from its weekend totals, and I don't know why. But the numbers stand at 8,960 from late Friday, and the confirmed deceased remain at 120. And I guess later on today we'll get the update from the weekend and yesterday. Pollen outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River is still registering as none, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of floral activity going on. And it's tickling my nose, and my mother, poor gal, has been starting to get her, seasonal sneezing. Otherwise, the air quality index is good at 28 parts per million, though they allow people to burn trash around here. Can you believe that? Burning trash. Fouling up the air by burning trash. Ugh. Daytime UV index is moderate at 5. So put on that put on the UV blocking. You got to get that blocked. The sunblock. I like to use something in the 30. Maybe even 50 for those of you a lot more fairer. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.42 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. London is 54 and partly cloudy. Paris is 57 and sunny. Rome is 56 and sunny. Kyiv is 35 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 47 and fair. Hong Kong is 63 and cloudy. Tokyo is 53 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 66 and clear. San Francisco, California is 48 and sunny with a wind advisory. Small craft on the bay, do take care. And New York, New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Honduran Indigenous activist who helped lead a fight against the construction of a dam has been killed. National Police Inspector Juan Sabillon said one suspect has been detained in connection with the killing of activist Juan Carlos Cerros Escalante on Sunday. Cerros Escalante, age 41, was a member of Honduras's Lenca indigenous community. He was gunned down Sunday in front of a church in the town of Nuevo Granada in the Caribbean coast province of Cortez. Betty Vasquez, the coordinator of the Santa Barbara environmental movement, said Cerros Escalante was killed in front of his children. We condemn the killing of yet another comrade and activist, said Vasquez. It was not conceivable, and it is not right that they criminalize people, persecute people, and later kill them for defending their land. We consider this a political assassination. In 2020 alone, 12 indigenous rights and environmental activists were killed in Honduras.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Even more hard-working staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Greece's health minister is requisitioning the services of private sector doctors from certain specialties in the wider Athens region to help fight a renewed surge in coronavirus infections that is straining hospitals to their limits. In an announcement released yesterday, Monday, Vasilis Kakilias said that despite repeated appeals for private doctors to volunteer to help in the public sector, very few came forward. Therefore, the minister said he was ordering specialists in pathology, pneumonology, and general medicine to help. Kakilias had said on Friday he would requisition private sector doctors unless at least 200 volunteered within 48 hours. A government spokeswoman said Monday that only 61 doctors had stepped forward voluntarily. The requisition order is for 1 month for 206 doctors, health authorities said. Greece has been experiencing a renewed surge of COVID-19, despite lockdown-related measures being enforced since early November, with dozens of daily deaths recorded, as well as increasing numbers of patients who have been hospitalized in intensive care units. About 500 people are hospitalized each day across the country, and with 200 of them being in the wider Athens region. On Monday, yesterday, Greece reported 1,707 new coronavirus infections and 69 more deaths, bringing the total confirmed infections in the country of around 10.5 million people to just under 240,000, and the death toll to 7,531. Sad news. Hope they get to work, and we better too. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.